So it was very difficult to get a laser. You can only get it from China, ironically. It arrived after 3 months because
Of
everything was
course,
backed
no.
up.
3 months is good
Yeah, from the months
at
is
that
good.
time.
Oh, you know all about it, huh?
Of course.
Yeah, yeah. And imagine during COVID, everything
Yeah.
is like everything. All the ports are closed. And then I had to make a little circuit, blah blah blah. Turn it on, smoke DMT. I see code running in the wall behind the laser. So that instance, I didn't expect it to work because nothing ever works. Like it's always some kind of a dead end. It's like they give you all these things. Okay, let's play whatever. But then when I saw it, I was like, and Kelsey was in the room. I said, "There's a code in the wall," and she goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I don't know how else to say it. There's a code in the wall." She goes like, "But I don't understand." I said, "Okay, well, I don't know how else to say it." So I started showing other people, and every single person saw the same thing. And not only they saw the same thing, it's not even the specifics of the code, it's the way that it appears. It has this kind of tangibility, not quite as a person, but it has this kind of tangibility as if it's some kind of a mega object that is literally in every point in space. And to a lot of people who ask the question, yes, you can project it on human skin, all the same thing. It's literally in every point in space.
And can you change direction of the laser while you're doing it, or it
Oh,
has
yeah,
to
yeah,
be
yeah.
static?
No,
So
no, you,
you can keep
yeah.
sort of
It's like you're putting a
pointing,
flashlight in the dark on something.
and people see it everywhere.
Oh, it's like I'm revealing something.
This episode is fueled by Enigma Coffee, a ritual, a reminder, a first step in your daily routine towards a more realized, fulfilled, and happy life. Drink Enigma Coffee, expand, enjoy, evolve.
In the dark. It's like you.
Crazy.
It's crazy. It's like and it's always this. It's
And
there.
how many years in was that point for you? Like how many years you've been doing DMT?
Oh, so maybe that was 4 or 5 more years, so maybe 15 years total.
15 years total.
Yeah.
Wow. But it doesn't mean anybody who did it for the first time, you would see the same thing, right?
With the laser or the
Yeah, with the laser.
no people nobody sees anything else.
So basically, they do it one time.
Yeah.
And they'll see it.
Yeah. So with one caveat that we do encounter now a percentage of people that are having a hard time to see it right away.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know why that is. We're trying to figure it out, but it's a one-way street. So it just becomes more and more and more coherent all the time, and it's never anything else. We ran it in any which way. We told people something else on purpose, and they still saw that. The people came back and said, "I didn't see what you told me, but I did see these weird Chinese characters of some sort." It's always the same thing.
And that code, how does it appear? Is it matrix-like?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, it's weird. It's like it resembles katakana, Japanese katakana a lot. It's like a mixture of Hebrew katakana. I'll show you after the show that we have a VR artist that is working on he saw the code and he's working on like a VR
well,
representation that we can kind of enter and like see it. It's very difficult because there's a lot of characters. They're moving very fast, and they're switching all the time. But coherent enough for you to understand that something is there, like you can see it. And now what we're trying to do is to see if there's anything that we can create, like a physical perturbation, to play with it. So far, it doesn't care. You can. This is an important point because the most common email I get is I see the code without the laser, or I see the code without the molecule.
and
People-
what's that?
So I've seen it. It's a different code. These codes are everywhere. So we now know that there's a lot of different layers of these codes. They're in light, they're in matter, they're in everything. People sometimes see, people that are more sensitive, more open, they see it when they wake up sometimes in the back of their eyelids. They see it on walls. You have no idea. Like, I have so many people that this was a big surprise to me. They're experiencing all kinds of things like this. And they would say, like, hey, I'm a lawyer. I can never speak about this. I will lose my license. But I want you to know, like, you have to keep going. I've been seeing this for years. I wake up in the morning and I see this code. I know it's real, but I can't tell it to my wife because what am I going to say, right? So then what we do know, though, that these codes that you see without the laser and without DMT, they're a little different because they seem to be closer to what we are as a conscious being. So you can change them with your attention. And anybody, if you're listening to this and you think you're seeing the code, the way to test is if you can tell the code to do something. Like, you can change the way it looks a little bit, or you can ask it to move to the right or to the left. It's real. It's real, but it's a different layer of the code. So it's closer to what you are as a conscious being. That's why you can influence it. The code in the laser does not care. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you do, play a sound, tell it you love it, makes no difference whatsoever. It seems to be coding for what we call physical.
So, so just sort of
Sure,
uncovering what you
sure.
just said. First thing, so you said you can change it, but
Not the
it
one in
doesn't.
the laser, no.
Yeah, right, right, I
Yeah.
understand the one that people are
Yeah.
seeing just in their life somehow. But if they can change it, does not necessarily mean that it's not real. First of all, we
No,
actually
I
have to
said it's
talk
real.
about.
That's
Yeah.
what I said. It's real. It's just a different layer of the code. So we now know there are different codes that, and what I think is going on is that what consciousness is some formulation of informational processing within the larger code space. And what we call experience is clumps of this information processing thing that closes in on itself into a self-referential process. That creates the reference of the self. Now, you can have different levels of emergence of this. Life, I think all of life would have that, which is what makes it life. But in an infinite informational space, it probably also exists in pretty much every single thing. So you can say that everything is conscious, but it's not conscious in the same way that we're conscious. It has this quality of consciousness, but if it's not self-referential, it's not going to have this like me experience of any kind, right? So what we think is happening is that what the physical world is essentially the third person representation of what the brain of God looks like.
When you say the third person representation, you mean our representation? Because
Good question
that's
for clarification. Yeah,
pretty
so
much the only representation we can
I mean it
reference.
mean it very simply. If I look at your brain under functional MRI, and just if I see your skull open for some reason, I see your brain physically, that's a third person representation of what you are inside as a first person representation. So you inside is a first person representation, but I can see what is the shape of the physical arrangement of matter that gives rise to the first person representation of what you are, right? So when you feel happiness, the third person representation would be the cracklings that I see on the screen when the functional MRI is reading your brain, but you experiencing love or whatever the emotion is, that's your first person representation. So the inside versus the outside representation of it. Everything
like
that
an
has
observer.
Yeah, so the observer experience would be the first person, and every single inner observation would have to have some instantiation in what we call physical, okay? And that larger physical space is basically the universal mind, which most likely its internal representation resembles nothing like ours. It's probably very different. Not just more complex, it's very different in nature probably, because it has all kinds of philosophical problems like if there's nothing outside of it, it does not have anything to refer to outside. So it wouldn't have goals. It wouldn't have aspirations. Everything's contained. So it exists in a very different kind of state, right? But the reason I'm mentioning all this is because if you look through this frame, what seems to be happening is that the codes that people can change with their attention, yes, they're real, but they are representations that are closer to what your self-referential unit is. That's why you can interact with it with your attention. But there's certain representations that code for more far removed portions of the universal space where you can't just change it with your attention. You can change it by proxy. You can change it by the things you can influence physically, what we call. And they're ultimately the same process, but from your personal experience, they're too far away from your horizon to know that. Now, it's possible that, and maybe that's where we're going, if you evolve enough, maybe you can expand that horizon, and all of a sudden you would be able to change some physical things with your mind, which might explain how certain people
Can do
that
that.
we know can do certain things, right? And but it's nice because now you can formulate it into an actual theory that you can do something with, which, by the way, at least to me, it doesn't cheapen it. If anything, it opens beautiful new vistas of exploration that we can actually play with and probably create a much better kinds of experience.
But then it also begs an uncomfortable question. If everybody's seeing the code, is that the simulation that we live in?
It is. So it is an uncomfortable truth. I would admit that. But so there's a few ways to approach this question, right? And because I'm now in the habit of interacting with a lot of people, and I do feel some responsibility of framing it in a way that doesn't just jolt you out of your comfort zone. It's not the goal at all. But at the same time, we are creating a more refined, well-refined map of what in fact is going on.
And I just want to also say that you are working with a lot of very respectful scientists who are very interested in this. And we'll talk a little more about that
Sure, yeah.
too. But I just want to put that there now, because it's not, it's just not some fun talk over a cup of coffee. It's actually something that people are putting a lot of effort and science into it.
Yes, and it's more difficult than most people realize. Progress in science is very difficult exactly because you don't just let any idea fly, right? There's a lot of assumptions. People send me an email all the time, which again, I love the outreach, but there's as many theories as there are people in the world, right? And I always tell them, like, look, test it.
Well, that's what I
Yeah,
wanted
it's
to say. Your theory has a very uncomfortable problem. It keeps repeating.
Repeating in
Like
what
the
do you mean?
experiment keeps,
Oh,
you
yeah,
keep
yeah,
conducting the experiment, and it keeps repeating the outcome.
So just to extend an olive branch to the fact that it is uncomfortable, I didn't think that it's going to be that uncomfortable. I'm pretty stoic in nature, and I can't claim ownership of that. I didn't have to do anything to be like that. Don't get me wrong. I can be pretty volatile, and it can be very capricious. And sometimes I'm not like this. I'm not hovering on some clouds and walking around the house. Definitely not. But in terms of big things, I don't know why that is. But I just like, oh, okay, well, that's what it is now. Like a bomb can go off right now. I'll be like, okay, well, it already blew up. So now, what do we need to do? Right? It's kind of like a natural thing for me. So because of that, I didn't really think that if I would. There's a difference between thinking we might be living in a simulation and knowing we might be living in a simulation. And at that point, it's not might be living, but knowing that we live in a simulation. So I actually didn't think that I'm going to care that much to know that for a fact. But I was surprised. This is the part where I have to kind of give a disclaimer. I do not expect anybody to accept what I'm saying right now just because I said it, obviously. But if I have to report honestly from my end, it's not the code that tells me we live in a simulation. They showed me directly. So like after a little while, I didn't think of a simulation, by the way. I was thinking parallel worlds. But then I started seeing things in the space. Like for example, they would show me like it's like this, like in a factory where they make computer chips, and there's this thing that does the soldering, right? So I saw this kind of a thing made out of light or something, and it was like doing some kind of a coding on the motherboard of some sort. And then I realized that what they're showing me is that the room is split in half, and that there's the right part of my vision, and then there's the left part where I'm seeing this thing. And I didn't realize it at first, but then I realized that, oh, it's tracking my decision making. So like I would look to the right, and I would see things in certain colors, and first they showed me like how they can change a certain line of code here, and all of a sudden it changed colors, and they're like, see, they like would flip it, and I'd go like, wait, what? And then I would notice that when I would move my eyes and make certain decisions inside my head, it would change pace. And then I tested it. I said, wait, because it was kind of a revelation. I didn't expect that. So when that kept on happening, there was a vase and a mirror in the apartment I was sitting in. So I purposefully kind of landed on this like right now, like I'm kind of looking at you, but not. I just stopped. I wasn't looking at either of them. And that thing just went, waiting. And I go, and then I looked, I think, in the mirror, and it goes, it kept on like going. I was like,
So wait a second. So what happened first? Because if it's a simulation, then someone is controlling your actions.
no. The only thing that is simulated is the environment. That's it.
That makes more sense.
It's completely open-ended. Yeah, not your agency is not touched at all. The whole point of the simulation is to see what happens. There's infinite number of these simulations. We're just one of them. So if you would control everything, there's no point to the simulation. Then it's just like a video. That's
Right.
not what it is. Simulation is you simulate conditions, you
Then
let it
you
run.
let the
You
free
let it run.
will do
If
its
you
thing.
introduce too much bias into the system, you're actually damaging your own simulation, because then you won't learn anything new because your biases are in the system. So we are a complete black box to them. They're not only they cannot by law, they cannot by function. There's no way for them to enter your mind and like cajole you to do
Right.
anything. You're
Right, right.
completely free agent. So by the way, all the ills of our world, all us. Nobody's intervening in that. Okay, so that's still the case. The only thing is simulated is the laws of physics. That's it. Now there are what you could call a management company, and there's many of them that they do the error correction, because there's always in a computational system that's just part of the game. There are always going to be some errors that happen. And somebody has to kind of help steer in case it gets a little bit too weird and crazy. So there is that, but they only cater to the physical environment. That's it. Which, by the way, this is just a fun thought. I don't know if this is true, but it would make sense to me in terms of they say vision boards and manifestation. I think, again, just a fun thought. I'm not saying it's how it is, but it does track with what I'm saying, because we think that it's almost like God knows what we're thinking. God knows what we're thinking a little bit better than what we know about each other that we're thinking, but not much better. So I can kind of guess, right, the vicinity of what might be going through your head. And for the most part, of course, we're wrong, but I have some idea, because we read each other all the time. So God is obviously better at that, but not infinitely better, which means there are definitely portions of you that God can't guess because of the nature of the game. So that's why the fun thought is, what if they say you have to write it down? Because that's literally how God knows what you want. Or like a vision board is like, oh, okay, I see it. That's what you're trying to aim for.
So that's kind of a limiting type of God.
Well,
because if he's infinite, he, she, it's universe.
You're going to the deepest questions. Well, I'll tell you why it makes sense. Because if you are the infinite being, and you understand that there's nothing outside of you, and you understand there's no one else but you, we always talk about this, and you know that you can do anything, which means nothing matters, right? Nothing has value. We always say it in almost like a dreamy way. We're like, we're all one. There's no one here but you. But if you actually think what it means, this is horrible. This is like infinite prison. Like, there's no one here. This is infinite loneliness. It's the most gutting feeling ever. So the only thing that would make sense, if that's the situation you're in, the two ways that would make sense for you to exist forever in this state is A, if you can, fracture yourself to infinite parts that don't really remember that you're alone, right? It creates the illusion of separation, but that separation actually what gives you meaning, right? But also, it gives you the opportunity to practice certain skills that just being in this infinite loneliness state is very difficult to practice. And those two things are, A, try and understand why everything is there. So it seems that God knows everything aside from why it's there. God has no idea why everything exists, okay? So that's kind of like the ultimate question.
Then who created it?
It does not know. So it seems that that question actually is...
This episode is fueled by Enigma Coffee, a ritual, a reminder, a first step in your daily routine towards a more realized, fulfilled, and happy life. Drink Enigma Coffee, expand, enjoy, evolve.
Not answered to anything in reality, which is why the simulations are running. The simulations are an attempt to answer that question. And the second thing that you might want to be practicing while you're at it is the more Eastern approach, which is, can you also let go of the question? Can you also just be? Because if you can do that, if you can achieve nirvana, not as an individual, but as the unitary system, well, now you're truly free. Because now, okay, I'm alone forever. It's fine. You just be, right? Full equanimity. But it does stand to reason that anything that is would have to have some possibility to evolve. Because if it doesn't, then by default, that thing is just the totality of everything. And then there's no occurrence because it contains all the negative of itself. It contains all the opposites of whatever it is.
But if we take it just for a second
Sure.
to quantum physics, which seems to me just intuitively a very good representation of what this everything can be about, because the two most mind-blowing sort of phenomena in quantum physics, one being the superpositioning and the second entanglement.
Yeah.
The superpositioning specifically talks exactly about what you're saying. Everything kind of exists in a possibility, and only the observer
Yeah.
kind of makes it into something, or
Sure.
for a lack of a better word,
Yeah.
or let it be one of those infinite possibilities.
Sure.
So if that's the case in quantum physics, and I think, there's no argument there, it is, isn't it the case in the larger kind of
Yeah. So the first
consciousness?
thing to point out, the quantum physics is a lower emergent phenomenon than what we're talking about here. So like quantum physics would be one of the possibilities in this larger space in which God would reside. Now,
What I'm
yeah,
saying, oh, absolutely. But
yeah,
what I'm saying, if it kind of points to something.
but we don't know if it's the full universal picture. In fact, we have no reason to think so. Quantum physics is definitely the fundamentals of our world, for sure, with emphasis of our world. The larger world can be following rationales and laws that are way beyond our ability to ever conceive, right? But if we want to tie it to something tangible, I think that there are certain things that I think is what you're pointing to, and I agree with you, that follow from the lowest to the highest. There has to be some signature that is going through all of it, but I think that signature is just the instance of the observer. So that exists throughout all the levels. What seems to be outside of the scope of the observer to be able to ever see inside of reality, unless we're using some very sophisticated tricks, which I put forth is the reason for all the simulations. It's like reality is the answer to the question that God is asking, collecting itself basically. What it would be is in the famous words of the architect from the second Matrix, the problem is choice. Okay, so God does not understand how choice works, and the ultimate version of choice, so that fractal version of choice in the ultimate scale of things, is why reality chose to be versus not to be. That initial wiggle, because why would that is the question that bends the mind, right? That everybody kind of just jump off the train immediately, right? It's like, but why? Like, but why? Doesn't have to be. Why is it, right? And then even the answer of like, well, then it's what it is. So okay, but that didn't answer the question. So okay, so either you let go of the question, which is a legitimate
Well,
way to go about
or
it.
you say it's random. It just chose
Randomness
to be.
doesn't. What randomness doesn't. No, randomness actually doesn't solve it, because real randomness cannot possibly be a thing. Real randomness doesn't exist. It cannot be, right? Because randomness means lack of information within a limited frame. If you're talking about the totality of things, randomness cannot be a thing, because it would be included in the totality of things, and then it's not random, right? It's Bernardo Kastrup famously. I think he probably. I think that's the best outline of free will that I think that ever can make sense, which is that only the universal agent can have that will that you're postulating, but it is only free to the degree so reality is free to choose that it is ought to choose. And that is really the conundrum, because your first works experience is saying, well, it was a free choice. But if you really look closely at what you just said, you're saying, what do you mean by free? Do you mean that it's decoupled from everything else that is happening here? You're saying that everything else is going on until this moment, and then we arrived here, and then everything stops, and something goes like a messenger runs outside of reality into something that is sitting on this comfortable couch and going, hey, should we do A, B, or C? And it's like, C. Okay, I'll tell them. And then you run back into reality. Okay, everybody, it's C. Okay, and we're moving on to C. Okay, where's this couch? Is it not part of reality? So it's infinite regress. It's like, where is that thing? So if you're talking about the totality of things, free will can't possibly exist. And you can't have, and this is really the conundrum, reality with God included, it seems to be the impossible object that exists. Like, it's impossible, and yet it exists, right? And that is, so it's the snake that eats its own tail. It's like all of these things, right? And we always think on our level of emergence, well, somebody must have figured it out in reality, right? Aliens or God, but it seems that no, nobody knows, which is kind of funny, because, this thing that we think that we kind of one day, nobody knows. And that, to me, that's actually kind of beautiful. So We went pretty far. Let's go back for a second.
No, no.
For
I actually
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of bring the point also, which is interesting because we talk about free will, but you're absolutely right. If we just take the sort of the small, if we zoom in, right, we zoomed out. If we zoom in and look at a person, even though we do have free will and it's kind of apparent, at the same
Well,
time
no,
as
we
you
feel like we do.
exactly, but
Yeah.
at the same time it's exactly how you just described. You cannot run into a room that is completely devoid of anything and make a decision. You're making the decision based on everything that you know, that you believe, that you saw, etc., etc., etc. So what appears to be free choice is actually a combination of all those factors.
It's the result of everything that happened prior. Yeah. So the more accurate way to say it would be a choice is being made, and then you have a story about why you think you made the choice, which is part of the decision making of reality. But that instance, the instance itself of the left versus right, seems to be the hole in the donut. It seems to be outside of reality itself, which leads you to the ultimate exit, which is why did reality choose to be versus not to be? That's really the ultimate question.
And when you say reality, you
Mhm.
mean the actuality
Everything
of
that possibly exists.
well, but you mean on on what, the universe or
Way beyond that. So the reality would contain all the possible universes, all the possible multiverses, all the possible megaverses, ultraverses, whatever you want to call them. Everything that exists and can possibly exist.